There are a lot of reasons why a rider may want a camera on their motorcycle, whether it's a camera mounted to their helmet or on the motorcycle itself in order to document road trips and share those with family or friends, or more practical means as a way to document their rides out on the street in case they're involved in a crash. There are a lot of different options for mounting cameras, and I would bet over the years I've tried almost all of them. But if your goal is to log every ride, and you never know when something video worthy might happen, so you want something recording all the time, and you're okay with a single mounting point, or you want to protect yourself legally in a dispute for who is at fault in a particular crash, then you want something more like what we're going to talk about today. So I was sent this camera, this K6 by INNOVV. I was sent this camera for review, and I want to share this with you today. We'll talk about this K6. It's a dash cam type camera for your motorcycle. We'll talk about some of its features. We'll look at the app that comes with it. We'll get it installed on a motorcycle. We'll go for a ride and show you what you can expect to get from the INNOVV K6 if you choose to buy one for yourself. So this is the camera itself. You've got a front camera, a rear camera, and the wiring harness that goes between the two. They also have a version of this that's intended to be installed on a bicycle. The main difference is where you get the power supply from between the motorcycle version of this and the bicycle version of it. But this is the motorcycle version that also comes with a wiring harness that allows you to have continual power going to this, either installed from the battery of your motorcycle or a switched power source on the motorcycle so that it comes on when the motorcycle's on, cuts off when the motorcycle is cut off. But what's nice about this setup is some of these older versions of these dash cam style cameras had what they call a DVR in the center, and it would be a box about 3 by 3 inches, maybe sometimes a little bit bigger, that would handle all the DVR functionality of the camera system. So your SD card would go in there, all the recording would actually take place in that box. The nice thing about this new setup is all of the DVR is right here in this front camera. So your micro SD card goes in here. All of the functionality of recording is in this front camera. So it makes it a little easier to install because you don't have that box to hide under the seat or in the fairing of your motorcycle. All you've really got is this front-facing camera, rear-facing camera, and the wires that go in between. So the front camera records at 2K at 30 frames per second. The rear camera records at 1080p at 30 frames per second. I do wish the frame rate was a little bit higher, because if you're in a situation where you need to get a still frame from your video to log a license plate if a car was involved in a crash, it's a little bit harder. Sometimes motion blur is introduced at 30 frames per second. So I'd like to have seen 60 frames per second, but we'll get out and test it in a little bit and see how big of an issue that really is, and see how good of a still photo you can get from these 30 frames per second. INNOVV provides a smartphone app for the iPhone and Android that controls all of the functions of the camera, and the camera can also record in a loop mode. So your footage is secure as long as you don't allow the system to record over footage that you intended to save. The way that works is the system records for a certain amount of time. You set that up in the app, however many minutes you want it to loop in, say 1 or 2 minutes, and then it starts recording in increments of that time frame that you set up. Once the card is full, the camera will delete the oldest file and record over it. So how much recording time you've got will depend on the size of the SD card that you put into the camera, and this camera can hold up to a 256 gigabyte card, which is fairly large and is going to give you more than adequate time to get the footage off of the camera if there's something that you want to save permanently. So let me get to work on the motorcycle. We'll install the K6. I'll show you how I installed it on my bike. We'll look at the app and the controls that it gives you for the camera, and then we'll go for a ride and look at some of the footage that you can expect to get from this K6 if you buy one for yourself. So I ended up doing the install on the Rocket 3. I thought that might be an easier option because it doesn't have all the fairings and the plastics to deal with that I would on the Indian Challenger. And the install came out pretty clean. They give you everything that you need to install this. Here is the front-facing camera. I used their handlebar mount, and I mounted that up on the handlebar, so it's got a nice view at the front of the motorcycle. And then for the wiring, for the power of it, instead of using the wiring harness, I had this USB plug over here. So I ran cables down by the handlebars and plugged it into here. And then for the camera going to the back, I ran underneath the tank. So we're going underneath the tank. So we're under the seat and out the back of the seat for the rear facing camera right here. But overall, I'm pretty happy with the install. It's nice with the app. You can get the app loaded up and get a live view of what's going on with the cameras. And that way you can, while you still got all this stuff loose, you can rotate the cameras and get everything lined up the way that you want. And then you're all set. We'll go back inside. We'll pull all this camera system up on the app, and we'll take a look at some of the footage that I got off of it. So I didn't want to go into a whole lot of detail on the install. I chose to install it on the Rocket 3. Every motorcycle is going to be different, and you know, every install is going to be different. Even if you do it on the same motorcycle, you may choose to use the wiring harness, wire it directly into the motorcycle. I haven't decided for sure yet which motorcycle I want this to stay permanently on, and the Rocket 3 allowed me to get it mounted up the easiest and to get this video out to you guys. But as you can see, it doesn't take a whole lot of work to get this mounted up if you want just a simple install. Something on like my Challenger would be a little more involved because you got a lot more fairings and things to get the cables through, and you know, finding the proper mounting options for you takes some experimenting to find out what works best for you. So let me get the ignition switch on the motorcycle turned on. That will allow us to connect to the camera with the app on my iPhone. We'll pull up the app and I'll show you what you can expect to find in the app and what kind of controls you've got from there. So this is the INNOVV app. I'm connected to my motorcycle, which is sitting over to my left-hand side. The controls on this are pretty basic. If I click on that camera in the top left-hand corner, you can see it starts recording and then it shows the shop. So if I roll back here, you can see me there. You get a live view. You can also see in the top left-hand corner of this screen, the rear camera, so my garage door. You got options to switch to just the front view, getting rid of the rear camera. See me over there to the left of the screen. You can look at just the rear view, out the camera, and the front and rear view, which is what it defaults to. So it shows you the recording that's flashing up there, so you know in the app that you're recording. Let me stop the recording from the camera, so it's not recording anymore. Back to the home screen. This allows you to take photos, so you can use it to snap photos, either from the front, rear camera, or the combination of both. If I click on this, I've got local files on the right, so those are files that are stored on my iPhone. And I've got camera files. If I click on that, it's going to show you the different files that are stored on the SD card on the actual camera itself. So continuous videos. These are all the videos that I got from my running around this afternoon, and we'll get that up on the screen here in a little bit and allow you to see those in a little more detail so you can see the quality. You can sort them by front only, by rear only, or see them all, which is kind of nice that it allows you to sort. And then if you've got a folder for accident videos, protected videos, and any pictures that you take along the way. The settings on this, the other things, this button www gets to the INNOVV website. There's a frequently asked question, there's a forum, and a place to provide feedback. Right in the center is the settings on the camera. We'll take a quick look at that. So Wi-Fi, I'm connected to the camera. That's the default password for the camera. And then Wi-Fi active during active duration is set at 3 minutes. You can set the resolution of the camera, the bit rate, image orientation. So if you have to flip a camera upside down for whatever reason, you can switch the orientation on that to normal mirror, flipped mirror, or inverted, depending on where you install it. You've got recording settings, so you can set the length of the loop. Just a bunch of different options here. I'll leave this on screen for you for a little bit so that you can see. So aside from that, it's a fairly simple app. Let me get some of these files off of that SD card. We'll get them on the computer, and we'll look at them on a bigger screen so that we can see the quality of video that you get from this camera. So this first clip was recorded right at sunset. You can see all the car lights are on, street lights are on. It was fairly dark out when I was recording this, just before the sun was totally below the horizon. And the camera still does a good job, of having a nice clear picture. So if we zoom in on that license plate, now these were under really challenging conditions, but we can almost make out the license plate on that car. And that's where I was saying earlier, if it was 60 frames per second, we might be able to make that license plate out. But let's get under some better lighting conditions. We'll look at what the camera can produce there. So this is the front-only camera. This is better lighting conditions than we had before. But let's pause it and see if we can make out the license plate on that car under better conditions. So this still does have better contrast than the one under nighttime conditions, but it's still a little bit blurry. It's motion blurriness due to the 30 frames per second. It would be nice to see in a future iteration of this a recording at 60 frames per second in order to get those finer details. So I've not done anything in the editing software messing with contrast or the colors or anything. These are straight from the camera. I have chopped them up a little bit for editing purposes, but not done any color corrections at all. So this is what you can expect to get straight from the camera. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with the quality of the video that you get from this. The contrast is nice. It seems to handle different lighting situations fairly well. And in fact, I would say it's on par with the dash cam that I've got in my truck that was considerably more expensive than this camera is. And this camera's got a much smaller form factor than the one in my truck. So I think INNOVV with this K6 has got a really good setup. And let's head back into the garage. I'll give you some final thoughts on what I think of the camera, and I'll tell you how you can purchase one for yourself. So let's talk about some of the pros and cons of this camera. One of the cons, in my opinion, is that 30 frames per second, like I've stated earlier. I think 60 frames per second would be better suited for a dash cam style camera, but it's difficult to do that in a camera that's of this size. Another con is the camera has this small light on top of it that shows whether the camera's powered on or whether it's recording. This works well when I'm here in the shop, but once you get out in the bright sunlight, you can't see it, even cupping over the top of it. It's really difficult to tell what the status of the camera is, so I'd like that light to be a little bit brighter. But honestly, those are about the only two cons that I can think of for this camera system that I've discovered to date. Some of the pros, I think the app is really easy to use. It's very basic, but it gets the job done. I had no problems getting it to control the camera using my iPhone. I didn't have an Android phone to test it with, so I can't speak on that platform. I think the image quality is good. It's not nearly as good as a GoPro, but that's comparing two different animals, one built for, highlight videos and another built to document your writing, which this webcam is built for. For a dash cam, the quality on this K6 is very good, especially considering the form factor and the fact that you're recording front and rear simultaneously. I like that it records when you start writing, it stops recording when you stop writing, and it even has sensors built into the camera that will detect potential crashes and save those files to a dedicated folder so that you've got those for safekeeping. So if you're in the market for a dash cam video for your motorcycle, I think INNOVV has a great setup with the K6. I won't mention the price here because those things are always changing, but I will provide a link for you that you can go over to Amazon and check that out for yourself. Overall, the K6 records quality videos to the front and rear. It records when you start and stops recording when you do. The install is fairly straightforward with the ability to power it from the dedicated power source of your motorcycle or a USB plug on your motorcycle. So if this has piqued your interest, head over to mcrider.com/K6. I'll forward you directly to Amazon where you can explore the features of the INNOVV a little bit further and purchase one if you feel that it will enhance your rides as well. Till next week, guys, this is Kevin with MC Rider, and I'll see you on the road.